Hi everybody, I'm Botanically Insane. Welcome back to the YouTube channel. In this video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to do something that was highly requested, which is how to transition plants to semi-hydro. If you don't know what semi-hydro is, basically where you grow plants in an inorganic substrate with a water reservoir underneath. I've personally transitioned over 100 plants to semi-hydro, and I'm very proud to say I've only had maybe one or two not make it. Not to brag, but I'm pretty experienced in this matter. I personally just prefer to grow plants in semi-hydro. There's a lot of different reasons. The primary one being I don't have to water as often because there's a water reservoir underneath the plant. I just find that it takes a lot longer for that to dry out as compared to regular potting soil. Semi-hydro is also really great if you're having problems with root rot. Most people overwater their houseplants, and the problem with that is water and soil like to stick together and not allow oxygen molecules to get in between. And when there's no oxygen, you get bad bacteria eating your roots. So that's why semi-hydro is really great. It basically is an extra oxygenated atmosphere for your plant roots to be able to grow. And I just find it so much easier than regular potting soil most of the time. Also, you don't get fungus gnats, which is another huge plus. So we have 3 plants I'm going to transition today. Some of these are replacements for plants that I lost during my depression, which kind of sucks, but hey, it happens. The first one, this is a Alocasia platinum. You guys probably saw this in my Alocasia collection video, my very first video on this channel. This is one of my favorite Alocasias, and unfortunately mine died because I didn't water it. So we're gonna transition this one. And then I also have, just for funsies, I got an Alocasia dragon scale. This one I just thought was really full and bushy at Home Depot. And then we also have an Anthurium red velvet cake crust with a dock block Zara. I got this from Rare Plant Fairy. They sent this to me for one of our recent collabs, and it is gorgeous. Dreams really do come true. Oh, but first, before we get into this, I am using the world's most rickety table today, and I have like 3 beverages on it, so we'll see how this goes. Also, by the time this video has come out, I have released 2 more plant sweatshirts. I was actually going to wear one today, but they have been selling like hotcakes, you guys. Every time I make one, I literally sell it. And so I haven't even made one for myself, which is a shame because I made it because I like them and I think they're really cute. I will put that link below. We have a gorgeous plant lover applique embroidered style sweatshirt, and then we also have Grow Wild. But those have been really popular. They make really good gifts. Thank you to anyone who's already purchased one. It means the world. Can't even put into words what it means to me. And then when you guys post pictures of you wearing them, that is like, it's like surreal. Like, it makes me so happy. So thank you. So the first major question I get about semi-hydro is, first of all, what plants do best in semi-hydro? You can pretty much put any plant in semi-hydro. If you're really nervous about it, I transition to Monstera. Monstera have really thick roots, and they are just indestructible plants. They're basically like weeds in the tropics, although I know we don't think of them that way. That's a really good first plant. Some people, they don't have a good relationship with alocasias, but in my opinion, alocasias do really well in semi-hydro, as do anthuriums, although I know those can be a little bit pickier. So you just stick with what you're most comfortable with. Orchid would be another really good option. The second most common question I get is, what substrate should I use? And I'm gonna show you some examples. So probably the most well-known is called LECA, which is clay aggregate. They're basically these clay balls that have been heated up at a high temperature, and so they're really porous. They definitely do look like Cocoa Puffs. This is going to be the most economical option if you're trying to get into semi-hydro. Important to note that LECA does not contain any nutrients like soil does. You do need to add fertilizer, which will go into that. But otherwise, it's pretty simple. The second most common that you'll see people talk about is pon. I have a bunch in here. This is going to be a mixture of zeolite, lava rock, pumice. You can see it's a lot finer. Lechuza Pon is the most common brand, although it's increasingly difficult to find. I haven't been able to find it in the US or order it without ridiculous shipping for seems like at least a year now. It's been pretty bad. It's definitely something going on Lechuza end, and I'm not sure that it's makes sense, but they're doing it anyway. The thing about Lechuza is that it does come with a slow release fertilizer. There's like little pellets in here, and they will feed your plant for 6 months. After that, you either need to add in your own fertilizer or replenish the pellets that are in here. But if you can't find Lechuza Pon, I did find a really good replacement. This is the Basements Pon, and it's a little bit thicker, but it's still pumice, lava rock, zeolite. I'll put up some footage on the screen of me comparing the sizes. This doesn't have any slow release fertilizer granules in it, but that's okay. This is Osmocote Plus. This is a slow release fertilizer granules, and you can just sprinkle these in there, and then it's basically like Lechuza, just a little bit chunkier. So whole host of options that you can use. What I would suggest is plants with thicker roots like monsteras, orchids, and anthuriums. I usually recommend LECA. The thicker pieces just seem to work better for those roots. That's personally what I have all my monstera in, especially if it's a plant that gets really large. If you're gonna use Pon or a Pon alternative, that's gonna get really expensive. Pon or a Pon alternative, that's what I'm gonna recommend for plants with fine roots. So like alocasia, African violets, Hoya, philodendron, depending on the philodendron. And I think I'm just gonna hop into this because I feel like I've done a lot of explaining. I'm gonna start with the anthurium. We're gonna put this in LECA because, as you'll see in a second, the roots are thick. When you do this, you are going to want to get as much soil off of the roots as you can, which is sometimes easier said than done. It doesn't have to be perfect, but basically soil is organic matter, so you don't really want it hanging around. So I am going to go ahead and try to get as much of this off as possible. And that's the other thing why I said doing plants with thicker roots like monsteras and things is a little bit easier at first, because the roots are generally a little bit easier to clean. And then I'm gonna go ahead and rinse the rest of this in my sink. I get a lot of comments like you shouldn't wash soil down the sink. Obviously you shouldn't wash a lot of soil down the sink, but I feel like a lot of people that are saying that live in a lot warmer climates than I do. And it's just like, we have to turn our faucets off outside because if we leave them on, they will freeze and our pipes will burst. So doing this outside is not an option for me here in Wisconsin, so just keep that in mind. Ideally, if you can wash your roots outside, that would be great, but I don't have that luxury. So this is what the roots look like now, and I'm gonna show you after I'm done washing them in the sink. So I'm back from the sink, and this is what it's looking like now. It's not perfect, you can still see there's some soil in there, but this is good enough. You just wanna get the majority off. Now you have to choose your self-watering pot. I'm gonna show you the two main ones that I use, and I'll show you what I use them for. The first one I like to use for plants with thick roots. So these are the Rare Plant Bay shop planters. They're really sleek on the outside. They have them in different colors. This one's like a blush, and this one is a white. And I like them because they have the clear inner pot on the inside that's really long. So something like an anthurium, right? Their roots tend to grow very long wise, and so I find these pots are one of the only ones that can actually fit their entire root system, as opposed to some other pots like the next one I'm going to show you. So I really like these for anthuriums. The other one that I use quite often, you can get them on Amazon and they're really affordable. You can see the inner pot is a lot shorter. And it also has like a little window so you can see the water level, which is really nice. These ones I use a lot as well, and they come in different sizes. So highly recommend both of these. What I like to do is to actually just trim off maybe like a third. And what that's gonna do is actually just trigger and promote new root growth. You're gonna choose a pot that can comfortably fit the roots and fit some LECA in there. So in this case, it's probably gonna be this one from Rare Plant Bay. So you can kind of see how easy that fits in there. I'm gonna take a wick, a cotton wick. These pots come with them, but you can also just buy more if you run out. I'm just gonna run that through holes in the bottom. So then when we actually pot this thing up, I'm gonna put in about 1/3 of the way with LECA. There we go, just so it has a little bit of a base, and then we're gonna place our plant. Okay. And then we're gonna fill it up the rest of the way. Now I've pre-rinsed my LECA. I do recommend doing that. I recommend doing it in the summer months. Basically, you take all your LECA outside and you just wash it with the hose. There's a lot of dust that gets settled from the shipping process, so it's just nice to get that out of there. So then that's basically it in terms of potting up. It's that simple. Now people ask me, okay, what do I water it with and how often do I water it and all that jazz, okay? It's not as complicated as people make it out to be. What I do is I take a gallon of water straight from the tap, nothing special about it. I take some tap water conditioner. This is what they like use in fish tanks. And I just put 1 drop. That is going to neutralize any chlorine or anything in there. And then you just want to use an inorganic fertilizer. Organic fertilizers are meant to be broken down with the microbes in soil. So if you don't have those microbes, it doesn't work the same. So what I use is Super Thrive, very affordable, works great. The only thing you'll need, has everything you need in it. And it's safe to use for hydroponics, and it has hydroponic dosing on the bottle, which is really nice. And I just put mine in this little like squeeze bottle where I like put a little line showing like where I need to go up to. Put that in there. And literally, you could just get by with those 2 things. Some people want to pH balance and all that jazz. And the only thing I'll say about that is that most of the people that are putting in a bunch of ingredients in their nutrient solution aren't doing it correctly. You can actually get into a lot of trouble with your plants if you put ingredients in the wrong amounts or in the wrong order. The order is really important. And so especially if you're beginning, I don't recommend it. I would check out my blog post where I explain this in more detail. Basically, I've never had a problem with my plants just using plain tap water. Plants can survive in a lot of conditions. And obviously if you're a grower and wanting to optimize your yields, that's one thing. But if you're just a hobbyist, probably not gonna matter. The other thing too is even if you spend a lot of time setting the pH of your solution when you're mixing it, it's gonna change over time once it's in your plant's reservoir. And so it doesn't really amount to anything, is what I'm saying. So I wouldn't worry about that. I really wouldn't. Optional things you can add. This is for pest control. I highly recommend this. This is the only systemic pest control that I have found that you can put straight into your water reservoir with semi-hydro. This is SNS 209. It's natural. It contains rosmarinic acid, which is from the rosemary plant. Plant will take this up through its roots. Traces of it will remain in the cell walls, and if any pests try to munch on your plant, they dislike the taste and will leave it alone. Just for peace of mind, this is a really great product. I highly recommend it. I don't like systemic granules. Systemic granules are like steroids for spider mites, which not a lot of people know. And this actually works against spider mites, which is really nice. The last thing you can put in your solution that is, again, optional is just plain old hydrogen peroxide. This is 3%. It's just the kind you get at the store. Help oxygenate your water, but it's also good for fighting algae. So I just put in a little bit of that, and I don't really measure it because it doesn't really matter. And then you just mix it up. And I don't have the cap. My cat lost the cap for this. I just have to put my hand over it and pray, basically. The other thing I should mention, some people talk about the long method of transitioning versus the short method of transitioning a plant to semi-hydro. And I will tell you my thoughts on that. So the long method is basically where you take a plant from soil and you put it just in straight water, okay? Just straight water, and you let it develop water roots before actually potting it up with your substrate. I never do that. I think it's actually more stressful for plants, and I'll tell you why. Basically, you're taking a plant that was in its comfy home in soil, and then you're putting it in a completely different environment, like the complete opposite of what it was in before. And I just find that that seems to be really stressful on a plant. Whereas when you have a plant that's in semi-hydro, it's like basically in the middle between straight water and soil in terms of the oxygen content. And so I just find that plants do better when you just put it straight into semi-hydro, and then just make sure that you don't have the water level too high. So I would say for the next month after you transition, when you want to water from the top. Some people, they just like to fill up their reservoir. I would water from the top because, again, your roots are still sort of getting settled and they eventually will grow down towards the water source, just not to stress them out more than necessary. The water level is like about 1/3 of the way up this pot. So the roots are actually, because remember we filled the lower third with LECA, so the roots are actually like right above that. So the roots aren't sitting in water, they're like right above it. And I would keep it like that with a consistent water level for the next month. The other thing I'd highly recommend that helps with transitioning is a humid environment. Whether you have a greenhouse cabinet, or even if you just put, this is gonna sound silly, but just put a Ziploc bag around your plant to help seal in the humidity, that helps a lot. It helps keep the I forget the word, but it is the water pressure inside of the leaves. It helps keep that up while the plant is transitioning, and you'll have a lot less casualties that way as well. And that's basically it. And when you start to see new growth and it's looking like it's not stunted or anything like that, and you know you're in the clear. That was this guy. I'm gonna go ahead and do my allocation now. I'll do one with Lechuza Pon and I'll do one with the new pon. I've been really trying to figure out like, what do I wanna do on my channel? Do I wanna do tutorials? Do I just wanna do chill sort of chit chat videos? And I'm really open to suggestions. Like, I guess I could do a combination of both. I could do like commentary on rare plant trends. I could pretty much do anything. So let me know. I think this one, I'm not even gonna bother to go to the sink. I think this one's clean enough, to be honest, and I'm lazy. But again, I'm gonna cut off about a third of the roots. Where are my wicks? You guys could see the mess that I assembled to film this video. It's shocking. This one, I think I'm gonna use the basement's pon, I think. I really like this. If you've been struggling to find pon, I'd highly, highly recommend this. So I know you can't exactly see, but I'm basically filling a third of the inner cup with pon, and then filling in the rest with more, you guessed it, pon. I haven't pre-rinsed the basement's pon, so after I'm done with this, I'm gonna go over to the sink and do that and just sort of flush it out. And then I'll fill it up off camera. But you can see like the water level indicator is really nice because you'll be able to see when it depletes, and it just, you don't have to like lift up and look in the plant every time. You know what I mean? But also, I want to know what's going on with you guys. Are you guys doing okay? Because I know things are fucked up in the world. They really are. I mean, every day is just, how did we get here? How do we leave? Now we got our dragon scale here. I have a feeling all of these have really good root systems. I'm very impressed. I'm gonna cut off this one leaf that just looks wonky donkey. So you kind of see like these types of roots, I don't know, they seem to separate pretty easy from soil. If you get something like a begonia, those roots are basically impossible. Those ones you kind of really just have to leave some soil on it and just call it a day because there's like no way around it. One semi-hydro question I get, people ask like, do you let your water reservoir completely dry out before rewatering? Sometimes, sometimes not. I'm afraid that if I let it dry out all the way that I will forget about it. And that would be bad. So I don't usually let it go all the way dry. I don't know, I usually do the rounds like once a week and just top anything up. And then I would say probably once a quarter, so like once every 3 months, I actually go through and completely change out whatever's in there. And then sometimes I'll actually flush the substrate. So just holding the plant and its substrate in the sink or the faucet or whatever, and just, you know, flush out any built up like salts or bacteria that might be growing in there. It's not as labor intensive as I feel like a lot of people make it out to be. Like, this is supposed to be easier. Obviously, transitioning is the hardest part, but let me tell you, once all your plants are like in self-watering setups and semi-hydro, you won't want to go back. You really won't. So yeah, this one's a little bit harder because it had a quote unquote death plug. There's nothing wrong with death plugs. Your plant will be fine unless you are an overwaterer, but then your plant was probably doomed anyway. But with semi-hydro, we really can't have a bunch of soil, especially up towards the crown of the plant, sitting there because it will rot. So this is one where I would actually be just a little bit more diligent about getting that away. Does anyone else not like to separate their alocasia babies? Like, you can see this one was like a corm that sprouted up. That's like coming out, but I like to keep them in the pot because then you have a really full alocasia and then you don't have like the sad 2-leaf alocasia club status. So in this case, there's like really stringy, like really long roots. I'm gonna cut it kind of like a haircut, right? I'm gonna cut it back to like where I'm gonna get some fullness in the roots again. They're so long, they're probably gonna die off anyway. So we're just gonna go like that. Plant's gonna be fine. Now it's a lot easier to like get it in the LECA, right? I'm gonna use the same kind of pot as the other one. I'm gonna take my Lechuza Pon. Where is my outer pot? Oh, it's right in my hand. Boom. Oh my God, the baby. The baby!
I would like to see the baby.
Ooh, it's a leggy looking thing, Jesus. This thing needs more light for show. Get in there. Boop, boop, ba-doop. Just backfill the rest. And we just fill it up with the same nutrient solution. All right, everybody, we have our 3 plants all potted up in a giant pot of soil. You can check out any of the product links for what I used below. And I hope you guys have a really good week, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.